Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, the end of the week has come, and that can only mean one thing. The fate of the world will now be decided within the next hour or so. Who are the thumbs ups and thumbs downs for the week? All right, I'll start off with a thumbs up, which is unusual for me. And that is that the January the 6th commission is going down in flames. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. Apparently it's filibuster proof, and they don't have the requisite number of Republicans who are prepared to go over to the Democrats. The Democrats are, of course, howling, screaming that this is a cover-up and so on. And the media, echoing all these Democrat talking points. But there really is no purpose to this whatsoever other than to demonize Trump, the Trump supporters, ultimately the Republican Party, have it all go into next year and into the midterms, and basically to ensure a Democratic victory next November. It was obviously, that was the intent all along. And for once, the Republicans didn't, no, I can't say all of them because a number of Republicans did go over, but not enough of them. But, kudos at least the Republicans that they didn't write their own suicide note as they usually do.
They usually do. What I would have countered is that we need some kind of investigation of what happened on January 6th. I think that's fair. Who killed Ashley Babbitt?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Who's against that?
Right, that's right.
I'd like a show of hands, everyone. Who is against trying to find out who killed an unarmed woman? That with the cameras, that how many thousands and thousands of hours of camera footage on the premises,
right.
and then the people that were there doing it on their phones.
That's right.
And you don't want to go down that path. You have to explain that to me.
That's right.
Okay? You have to explain that to me.
Yeah, I think that's
and then if that leads somewhere that might be worthwhile, then right. Yeah, but then you'd have to throw in the rioting from last summer.
Right,
then,
that's right. Who killed Ashley Babbitt? Very good question that needs to be answered. Another question is, why did it take 3 months for us to find out that Officer Brian Sicknick did not die as a result of violent blows to the head, but that he died of natural causes? 3 months? And while there was all this screaming that about the mob, angry riotous mob of murderers who bashed his skull in, and the DC Examiner's office didn't disclose this. How did this come
And his family repeatedly appealed to the media to leave the story alone, let him rest in peace.
Right.
What they're saying about him is not true, and it is a injustice to his life. Okay, they pleaded with the media to leave it alone.
Right. That's right.
All righty. I have a thumbs up too. Remarkably, the decline in fall of Dr. Fauci. Okay, because now it's beginning. It's unraveling with his own words and his omissions. The interesting thing is that this is just another in a set of propaganda ploys that we've seen that have been absolutely, completely fake. All right. So I hope his day is coming, his day of reckoning. The revelation that, or at least giving credence to an alternative theory of the origins of the virus, that is the hottest political potato of our lifetime, George.
Right. Yeah.
By far.
Yeah.
By far. Because, it's fine. Demonize Russia, demonize Iran, demonize China. Fine. We're all used to this nonsense here. The US government is culpable if this theory holds water. And we all know the figures. They've been parading around on TV for over a year. Yeah. Okay? This is serious, serious business. Yeah. And at one point in time, you just can't say this, we're not going to consider it. There's going to be a come to Jesus moment here. We're going to have to say, yeah, well, let's find out. Okay. And I'd like to add on top of it, for all the fawning that Biden gets with the left media, he's not loved by the people. Okay. And the way I'm sorry, I'm truly cynical, is that the people that he brought into his administration, they're all just thinking, this is a resume line, okay? You know, when he's out of here, I'm going to go to, you know, I'll do the revolving door, you know, maybe in the defense industry, you know, maybe, you know, telecoms, I'll get a better job at Facebook. I mean, all of these people are using Joe Biden as a welcome mat, okay? And it's obvious.
Yep.
Because, I mean, because Joe Biden is a Republican by any stretch of the imagination, and he's got all of these lunatics around him, and it's a resume line for him to go to the better parties, to go to the better cafes, and have their brunches and their wine in the shower. Thanks, Joe, as they rub their feet on his face. That's how I see it. Sorry.
Well, I think so. I mean, I think that your point about the Fauci is an excellent one, because he knew all along. I mean, he knew from the beginning. I mean, the guy financed this.
He is Mr. Gain of Function.
Function research. And in a way, I mean, you know, one of the mysteries of this whole pandemic has been this apparently extreme reaction on the part of governments. And it was always baffling. I mean, why something so drastic? I mean, lockdowns. No one has ever responded to pandemics like this. It sounds like a number of governments knew very early on what the problem was, and they got frightened because they suddenly knew this virus is not like any other virus.
It could, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot more virulent because it's a man-made virus. I mean, created in order to be more virulent than the usual virus. That's why they reacted so extreme, with such extremeness.
And you just heard this on the gaggle, okay? And we're on locals too. We'll tell it again before we finish. All righty. A thumbs up, and you're gonna have to bear with me here. Apparently, Paul Ryan is trying to reinvent the Republican Party, right, and came out with his usual garbage nonsense. Yep. I mean, really. Mm-hmm. And here's a guy that lives in a cult too, okay? And who gave him a thrashing from his residence in Mar-a-Lago? Donald Trump did, okay? Now, I don't necessarily agree with Trump's critique, but I do agree that you need to critique Paul Ryan, okay? I mean, here was the Speaker of the House and decided to drop it all so he could enrich himself. I mean, these people have no courage whatsoever, because we did the tax cuts, we did the deregulation, I'm done, okay? But the rest of the country is not done. Mr. Ryan, okay? Yeah, why don't you retire? Go work for the marijuana industry or something, okay? Really, we don't need your help. You've helped us enough. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. I thought Trump's response to Ryan's speech was hilarious. You know, when he's the sort of, I don't know how many, I think he said about 3-time loser.
Loser.
Yeah, he was that total loser as speaker. And then very tellingly, he lost that 2012 election, which should have been, Republicans should have won that one. Obama was not popular in 2012. This was still, people didn't like Obamacare. And then there was, of course, Benghazi, which any intelligent politician could have picked up that issue of Benghazi and run with it all the way to the ballot box. The Romney and Ryan completely made a hash of it. So the idea that he now comes back, this 3-time loser, he comes back and then he starts lecturing into, well, how the Republicans need to get back to their winning ways. Yeah, you should know. Yeah, the 3-time loser, of course, because of what happened in 2018, which was a total debacle in the midterms, which was, again,
well, at least
Paul Ryan.
At least he knew the time to leave, okay? Right. Okay, in utter failure. Yeah. All right. So, and he's the last person to come and talk about what the Republican
Party. We win. You know, it's like, well, the winning strategy. Yeah. No.
It's unbelievable. But it's important to bring this up because, and I've said this many times here on the Gaggle, is that if the GOP is going to be successful in the future, and it's a big if, to stay away from all the boosters, okay? It's a really big if, because if they don't cut this cancer of libertarianism out of the Republican Party is done.
I think that's right. And I think that's why it's very interesting now that the media are championing the cause of Paul Ryan, because the media are in the tank with the Democrats, and they know that they can beat a Paul Ryan Republican Party in a month of Sundays. You know, they can just beat him day after day after day. They know the public just doesn't want to go back to Reaganism. The Reaganism, first of all, it was 40 years ago. And people didn't even like Reagan's policies. They liked him. He was a very popular figure.
Important distinction.
I want to go back to Reagan's policies. And so but the Republic, and it's very funny because he talked about, cult of personality over Trump. There's no cult of personality about Trump. There is a cult of personality about Reagan. I mean, the Reagan worship that still prevails in the Republican Party is bizarre. Again, 40
what's interesting, I'm glad you brought that up, because there are a few figures in American history. I mean, we have George Washington, we have Abraham Lincoln, we have Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and we have Ronald Reagan. That's it, okay? But they mean everything to everybody, right. All right? And that in some ways that's really a good thing, and in some ways it means there's really no method to there's no political reasoning. I mean, I like Ike. That's a great saying. You know, it really is simple. Okay, it has nothing to do with politics. Okay, I mean, this is. I mean, I can remember it was 2008 when Hillary was in the primary. She's the one that was talking about Reagan and Reagan and Reagan. I mean, you know, it's really quite extraordinary. So, I mean, if Paul Ryan thinks he can pull this off, right. Is that he's divorced policy from personality. You're absolutely spot on, right? You're up.
Right. So now we get to the long list of thumbs down. So first up, we have the right on cue, New York Times comes out with a story about, yes, another Russian hack. Apparently, the email server that the USAID uses in order to communicate with various human rights groups around the world had been hacked by Russia. We find this out from Microsoft. So Microsoft apparently goes around policing the internet and being the sort
of shitty software.
Exactly.
All right.
So you know, it's like the good Boy Scout that it is. It pointed out, look what the Russians did. You know, and because these people, these human rights organizations are very, very anti-Putin, and Putin really was desperate to get into these email accounts. So yeah, but it was, first of all, it was extremely apt that it should happen within days of the announcement of the summit between Biden and Putin. But it's also, I mean, interesting in that just about anything at all that goes wrong with, as you say, shitty software, it's automatically attributed to the Russians. And the third thing is, why are human rights organizations around the world in touch with the USAID, which is basically an agency of the US government? But hey.
Just saying.
Yeah.
My only reaction to that is a hacking story. I came across the headline, I skipped it, George. Okay, however, in light of what you said, the Russians are pretty shitty hackers, aren't they? They keep getting caught.
They keep getting caught, yeah.
I don't know. Vladimir Putin ought to look into this here.
Yeah,
I mean, clean house here, okay?
And they can't kill anyone. You know, they keep the poison, and they can't kill it. I mean,
the poison commissariat is just not up to snuff.
No,
it's not like the old school.
Like the old days, exactly. In the good old days of the NKVD, boy, you know.
When is that? When you need to have that umbrella, where is it? You know. Anyway, okay, it was a good one. Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul. I really like the courage. I mean, and he's a libertarian, so I'm being fair. I always try to call it straight here. I really, the fact that he is a physician, a practicing physician, and he can go toe to toe with these monstrosities like Fauci, who probably hasn't touched a patient in 40 years. I don't know. I'm just saying, okay? But I mean, here's the reason why I like the way Rand Paul interrogated Fauci is that he's doing it from a physician's point of view as well. And he said it in words I understood, okay? Not all this gobbledygook that's coming out. I mean, it's kind of like, it was kind of like playing Jeopardy with Fauci, If you ask the right question, you might get the right answer, but you got to ask the right question because I'm not going to help you. Did you see that in his testimony?
Yes, I did. Yeah. No, I kind of agree with you. I think that he was very probing, and he succeeded in forcing Fauci to drop his avuncular, patronizing mask. And suddenly he's sort of a real opportunist,
deer in the headlights
fighter that he is, and that's something, because usually Fauci is very good at dismissing everybody. I know everything, and I'm this lovable, everyone's favorite uncle routine. And then suddenly he couldn't do it anymore. And now Fauci is being forced to make concession after concession after concession after having denied any knowledge of anything that went on at the Institute of Virology, any knowledge about the gain of function research, and all of that. And now he's being forced to acknowledge all of these things. So I think that's kudos to Rand Paul, who really has been running with this. He was the first to press Fauci, and now others are doing it, but he was the first.
Just speculating here, but I just have to wonder if there's personal corruption involved as well. I'm just going to leave it at that, okay? But if someone is dishonest with you repeatedly over and over again, there's a natural tendency, what else are you hiding? And what else are you not lying about? What else are you not telling the truth about? Two very important things. You're up.
Yeah, no, I agree. Then thumbs down, Germany the other day announced that it had committed genocide 120 years ago in Namibia. And it said that it's very, very sorry about it and has promised to pay Namibia $1.3 billion, I think, something like that, for some education, whatever, services to Namibia. Now, when you look at Germany and you think, now, how much has Germany paid in compensation and restitution to all of the countries that he devastated in World War II? Very little. I mean, it paid a little bit immediately after 1945, and then it stopped. It has paid quite a bit to Israel.
Yeah.
Now, but that in itself is very interesting, because as a result of what Germany did, let's say Germany, first of all, drives out the Jews before World War II. Palestine has to suffer at the consequence of that. Then after 45, Germany is subsidizing Israel. So twice over, the Palestinians have had to get shafted by Germany. And then you think, well, what's Poland got from Germany? What's Yugoslavia got from Germany? What Greece? And of course, the Soviet Union, Poland. So these are all a lot more recent than 120 years ago. And really, Germany wasn't even a colony for that long. I mean, all the colonies, a colonial power all that long. I mean, all the colonies were taken away from Germany in 1914. So what Germany is really doing here is getting self-righteous. Hey, well, we were a colonial power, but we acknowledge all the terrible things that we did, whereas you, British and French and the Dutch and Portuguese, and Belgians, yeah, you haven't paid any compensation. See, we are so much better than you are. A classic German self-righteous pose. I just find it nauseating.
I find it mystifying and nauseating. I mean, it's a very expensive bill afoot to pound your chest to see how virtuous you are. It's kind of sad that the way you do it is through money. Okay, yep. I would have thought that education, infrastructure, cross investment, things like that. That has much more of a meaningful thing. Is like write a check and now you're off the hook. Great. I hope you feel better. All right.
Yep.
Remarkably, thumbs up for Emmanuel Macron. Okay. I get so confused with this guy. I don't like him. I think he's a fake and he's a fraud and he's a spokesperson for neoliberalism. And he's a bad one at that. However, when, and correct me if I'm wrong, George, because I'm stealing this from you from a previous video, as when he was asked about the condition or situation of Mr. Navalny in Russia, he basically said, correct me if I mean, what do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do? Okay. And wow, it's very remarkable. A short sentence, gets straight to the point, puts himself out there and makes it clear. So exactly, what is he supposed to do? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think this excellent thumbs up. Exactly. He said, well, you want us to go to war with Russia over Navalny? Not going to happen. And and then he went on. He's saying sanctions are not getting us anywhere with Russia. We haven't changed Russia's policy one iota through sanctions. He blurted this out. I mean, it's an amazing thing that a political leader blurts something out. Remember, he also blurted out about NATO being brain dead. And he has a tendency of saying these things. Unfortunately, with Macron, is that there's never any follow-up. He said, okay, great. Now, how about let's liquidate NATO and get to some serious security arrangements in Europe. Now, let's end this whole, sanctions, but there's never really any follow-up on all of this. And, I'm sure, at the next EU meeting, Macron will be back saying, yeah, we need to tighten sanctions on Russia for whatever reason.
Macron reminds me of a sophomore student I had when I was a lecturer at the University of California. Every once in a while during my class, he would stand up and say, Marx said that the workers of the world should unite. Thank you. And he would sit down and say, well, yeah, he said that. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, other things like, only the United States has used nuclear weapons against people. Sat down. You've got a name for effort. Got a name.
No, I agree. There is this, it's like, some people applaud him. Good on you, Macron. He's with us. He's a sensible fellow. And then he just, exactly. He sits down and then, we don't hear any more about this.
Did you see Peter Sellers in Being There?
Yes. Yes.
I think sometimes that's kind of like Macron, because Chauncey Gardner was his name. He all through the film, he said amazingly interesting things. It just didn't always fit to the context. Okay, Peter Sellers, Being There, one of the greatest films ever made.
That's a great film. Yeah. That was a good one. So a couple of sort of minor sort of thumbs down on the day of the anniversary of the George Floyd killing at the renamed George Floyd Square, and journalists all trooped out there. Oh, this is the anniversary. Here's George Floyd Square now in Minneapolis. There was shooting. And then the journalists, well, I think there's some shooting going on.
It was a British journalist, right? I think.
Yeah, I think so. But there were a number of journalists there because it was a big media event. So it was a number of journalists there. Oh, shooting! And it seemed like the appropriate way to commemorate the anniversary of a celebration of a career criminal and a junkie. Now, he didn't deserve to die, but nonetheless, he was a career criminal and a lifelong junkie. So, canonizing him shows, how frivolous, American culture has become.
I watched that clip a few times when it came out. Another thing that I found really interesting is that he was holding his microphone with the camera on him, and then they hear the gunshots, and then he looks over to see what's going on over his shoulder, and then he gets out of the frame. But what was interesting is that people that were running away from him, none of them were looking back to see what was going on, because why would I look back? Okay, this is what happens here. Okay, you just get the hell out.
Yeah, exactly.
That takeaway for me was it said everything. It said everything. It said people. It's not like, oh my God, something happening. It's like, no, oh my God, it's happening again.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get the hell out. Yeah.
All right, my last one is Biden's call for a 90-day investigation into the origins of the COVID virus. You've got to be joking with me here. The same people in the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and all the other alphabets, what do you think that report's going to look like? Okay. I mean, these agencies are so politicized right now. It would be racist if we thought the Chinese, what is that going to be the first line? Following the tenets of wokeism, we have drawn the 10 commandments of the virus. It's just like, I'm not even anticipating it, George. I could care less. These are the wrong people, the last people I'm going to trust. Okay.
And remember how they accused Trump of being responsible for violence against Asians because he referred to it as the China virus, even though there's never been any serious doubt that the virus originated in China. Even if you subscribe to the wet market theory, the origin was still China. So he called it the China virus. And then, of course, he was accused of violence against Asians. But of course, we know that the violence against Asians is being perpetrated not by people who are listening to Trump or who give a damn what Trump says, but they're people, holding up grocery stores and Chinese takeout. So
and
they use that.
Beating old women with a brick.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is that the cat's out of the bag. Let's see where this goes here. I'm convinced that this is so explosive. And as usual, George, in your very, very first comments, maybe the fact is they realize that this really, really could get out of control. And that's why what we perceive, and I still believe, was a gross overreaction.
No, I think it was a gross overreaction. But it may help explain why they overreacted. That all along, they knew something we didn't know. In other words, this isn't quite.
Did they tell Trump? Did they tell Trump?
Well, that's a good question.
That's a good question.
Right.
Again, planning for failure.
Right.
Because if he didn't have full knowledge, and this is only a hypothetical here, and this is not in support of Donald Trump. What I'm just saying is that if you have the primary decision maker that is not completely informed, the pros, the cons, the ups and downs,
right.
You're going to come out with commentary from that same person that may not be congruent to the gravity of the situation. I'm just speculating here.
I think that's a very good question, which is why he often did express a kind of optimism that was not warranted by the facts, but it was warranted by the previous arcs of viruses. Yeah, I mean, it'll take a few months, but then we'll be over it. Oh yeah, when the weather gets warmer, then we'll get over it. There's kinds of things that he said, which in retrospect seemed to be ridiculously over-optimistic, may have been because he didn't know. They didn't tell him that, that may be true of past viruses. It's not true about this one. So
as far as calling it the Chinese virus, that doesn't move me one way or another.
No.
In my senior year of high school, I had the Russian flu, and it was really, really nasty.
Right.
And it was painful. I mean, I remember I was afraid to lay down because my chest was filling up with fluid, so I had to sit to sleep because I didn't want to drown. It was called the Russian flu.
Yeah. There's no, and I'll tell you.
And the Spanish flu most likely came from Kansas. Everybody.
And if there's one thing we can be sure of, it was any basis for thinking that this virus originated from Russia, we would have called it the Putin flu, and we would have demanded immediate access to all Russian military laboratories, all of them. I mean, there wouldn't have been any of this. We mustn't jump to conclusions. We've got to wait.
We'll send a trusted hand.
That's it, exactly. Yeah, the Putin flu is what it would have been known as.
It's a ship of fools.
Right.
I'm stealing that from Tucker, but it's a ship of fools, all of this here.
All right.
I'm done.
All right, I've got a couple of, well, first of all, there was the story of the police officer who made that very amusing video. I mean, I think it was on either Tucker Carlson or Hannity, I can't remember one of them, but he made a very amusing video of a spoof of he's arriving at the scene and there's a knife fight, and then he calls up LeBron James, Mr. James, what do you think I should do? There's a couple of guys going at it with knives. What do you recommend? And said, oh, I see. You don't care if it's two African Americans. You only care if it's a white person and an African American. It was a very, very funny podcast.
From a police officer.
Yeah, a police officer, great wit. But anyway, he has now been fired by his police department. and it is a ridiculous thing to do. He wasn't doing anything other than making fun of LeBron James. He wasn't making fun of his colleagues. He wasn't making fun of his bosses, the city government or anyone else. He was rightly making fun of LeBron James, because remember what LeBron James did. I mean, he pretty much doxed that police officer who shot the young African American woman who was about to stab to death her friend or whoever she was fighting with. It was a split-second reaction, and he did it. And then how did LeBron James respond? He kind of published a big picture of that police officer.
You're next.
Exactly. I mean, it was an absolutely disgraceful thing to do. So he was making fun of him. It wasn't even vicious. He was just thinking that LeBron James is an idiot.
I just hope this police officer has a good lawyer, because it's a clear violation of the First Amendment. So I mean, on its face. Okay, let's see if there's any courage to address it. They should, and I think this guy would win easily.
I think so too. I think it's clear violation of his First Amendment. He's entitled to do this. Yeah. Do you have anything else? Well, I want to kind of take steal what you mentioned last week, and that was the business of the anti-Semitism. Now, this has really become absolutely outrageous, the way this term anti-Semitism is now being regularly used. But I mean, they're using it about anyone who criticizes Israel. I mean, now no one even hesitates, just to call somebody anti-Semitic, even though what it's supposed to mean is an irrational hatred of all Jews. Nothing to do with Israel, Jews as such.
And not only Jews live in Israel.
Right, exactly. Yeah, most Jews don't live in Israel. So, that's a fact. I mean, more Jews live in the United States than live in Israel. So that's just an absolute nonsense. But now anti-Semitism is just thrown around, completely recklessly. So we had the other day, Marjorie Taylor Greene, in a kind of, foolish comment. She likened I think the mask mandates to the Holocaust. Anyway, basically, you don't touch the Holocaust. You don't bring it up. It's a foolish rhetorical step. But she wasn't being anti-Semitic. And yet she now got, Marjorie Taylor Greene was making anti-Semitic comments.
She was actually protective of Jews and of Israel.
Exactly. That was the point. It was like she was saying, yeah, this is like the kind of the yellow star, what the Nazis were doing. It's like a yellow star. You kind of demonize people, and that leads to the Holocaust. Anti-Semitic. I mean, this has just become a completely mindless term that's just thrown around.
Well, this happens more times than not, where there's a historical artifact, a symbol that we understand, and it's with the best of intentions appropriated, but obviously they don't understand its original meaning in context, and that's why I think you said stay away from it, because. Well, I think the Holocaust is a standalone event, and I think we have to look at it that way, all right? A horrific event in human history. But, it's like what I saw on, I think it was MSNBC, it was during the W. Bush administration, and how did, I think, again, I think Israel was involved. Yes, it was. And, it was the last visit I think Bush made as president was to Israel, and again showering all this money, and there were people were critical that it wasn't enough, that he wasn't sufficiently pro-Israel, and then it was like appeasement. You're appeasing, and then they were throwing on this panel. It was really hilarious, and well, that's not appeasement. Yes, it is appeasement. Right. And then they said, well, what do you mean by appeasement? So, well, when Britain appeased Germany over Poland in 1939, it's like even this guy doesn't even know what it's about. Okay? No, or like when I think it was Comey. Comey was in front of a congressional hearing, and they go, do you know the company Gazprom? No, I'm not aware, but it's one of the largest gas companies in the world. Okay, and then one of the staffers told one of the senators, it's an oil company. No, it's not an oil. It's a gas company. Gazprom. I mean, these people that think they know what they're talking about just blur everything all over the place. It becomes meaningless.
Right, completely meaningless. Yeah, yeah. No, that was a classic. I mean, because they're all talking about Russiagate and what Putin's doing and what the Russians are doing, and then you don't even know that. You don't even know what Gazprom produces. I mean, it's like, so. I mean,
in the Steele report, Carter Page was supposed to get 8% of
something like that.
That would make him a billionaire.
Exactly. I mean, it was I think it was 19% of 19% of a sale of Gazprom. I mean, you think, I don't know how many billions would be involved in selling Gazprom. 19% of that. Wow.
He would be in the top 100. Carter Page, make him pay.
That's right. And that was in the Steele dossier. And imagine people saw that, and for months, still years afterwards, they said, "Whoa, no one has refuted anything in the Steele dossier. It's still, that's still, I mean, if you're prepared to go with nonsense like this, I mean, you kind of.
But George, just imagine, for some odd reason, you and I, before it was released to the public, and you were given the Steele dossier, and I was given a Steele dossier, and we could do a quick chat like this, you and I would be both saying, who wrote this? Like an intern for the Atlantic Council?
That's right.
I mean, it's all over the place. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Not at all.
And then when I read it, I said, these people actually believe this. This is so, I mean, it's not even clever. It's just dumb.
It's dumb. And that's why all this talk about, oh, well, the journalists were taken in by Christopher Steele. No one was taken in by this. They wanted to believe this because they hated Trump so much. They saw this as a vehicle to bring down Trump. So they went along with it. But the idea that anyone was fooled by it, whoa, boy! And I thought this is pretty. This sounds all.
Well, I think there probably were some. Okay.
Well, I think there may be people really down in the low IQ. If you look at the bell curve, they were definitely on sort of the left-hand side of the bell curve. But a lot of the sort of shrewder journalists knew exactly what they were doing. They were running with this because they wanted to get a special counsel appointed, and then get Trump, mired in the special counsel investigation, which always happened. Even you can't prove this, but you can get him on perjury. You can get him on obstruction of justice. That was the reason for setting up a special counsel, and that's what they were running. That's why they were pushing the Steele dossier in the hope of getting this special counsel appointed.
And when that failed, Barr is also a traitor.
That's it.
Everybody's a traitor. All right, I'm done. That was a good
one. I'm done as well. I don't know more. So, all right, Peter. So that was the thumbs ups and thumbs downs for this week. So some people can rest easy, but some people have a lot of homework to do. We will be back.
Don't rest on your laurels because we're watching, and we're on locals, thegaggle.locals.com.
Yes, exactly. Thegaggle.locals.com. We're also on Rumble. Look us up on Rumble. And if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.